Howdy ho ho, my good humans. How the hell are you doing? This is Unnecessary Rambling. I am Brandon Sylvia. I appreciate y'all for stopping by for some Backlog Game of the Year action here today. I'm going to be going through and ranking every game that I knocked off the backlog in 2023 and some replays as well. Wasn't really sure if I should include replays into this Backlog Game of the Year ranking list because I have a feeling it's not really going to be fair, because when I go back to replay something, I'm usually aware that it's something I enjoy, and I just kind of want to revisit that nostalgia, revisit those good feelings that I know the game can bring to me. So I don't know, comparing that to games that I played for the first time might not be fair, but at the end of the day, we're just going through talking about every game that I played in 2023 that did not release in 2023 and ranking those bad boys one by one. And as always with these rankings, we gotta do it in a good old tier maker tier ranking fashion here today. I'm using my iPad to do this all on the fly today, so I apologize if there's a little lag, a little latency with how the tier maker is scrolling and all that shit. But yeah, man, I'm having some weird ass issues with my computer that I definitely got to get fixed soon. Worst time to crap out on me right at the end of the year, where we're doing our game of the year coverage and our game of the year rankings and all that shit. But regardless, these are the games that we will be ranking today, and we got to start it off with Bully, man, at the top of the list here, and very much at the top of the list here. This was an absolute treat to go back and revisit. And once again, maybe a little bit unfair to include it here because it is a replay, but god damn, man, it'd been so long since I went through and played it from front to back, and it is a joy to experience. Still to this day, I think it really holds up better than a lot of classic Rockstar games because the loop is so different. You know, going off to class and going to your PE class, doing the damn dodgeball mini game, doing the wrestling mini game, then going off and taking your English quiz, your math quiz, working on your bike and trying to soup that bad boy up. It is so fun. And then having that combined with the actual story that is going on throughout the game, and then having that combined with this world. You know, Bulworth is such an interesting location because it's so interactive. You know, almost every building in this game has real purpose for being there. There's shops that you can go and enter, and everything, it feels so just purposeful. There's very few buildings or very few just areas in this world that don't feel like they were intentionally designed for a reason. It's not just a lot of set dressing, which I really appreciate, and I would love to see Rockstar go back to these smaller hub areas where they can really get in there and make, you know, the entire town, the entire city or whatever feel so alive. I just feel like Bully, the world of Bully, feels so much more alive than 99% of open world games. And it's such a cozy game as well, you know, with having the holidays and shit, and the missions designed around the holidays with winter and throwing the snowballs, and Halloween you're going out and egging the damn the dorm rooms and shit, like, and everybody's dressed in their Halloween costumes. It is a really comfy, cozy vibe, while also having, you know, that good old classic humor that you know and love from Rockstar from that era, definitely on full display with Bully. But yeah, that is S tier, no doubt about it. And next up here we have Tomb Raider 2013, and I think for this one, I wouldn't put it on the same tier as Bully. I'll put it on the A tier. I think the gameplay in Tomb Raider 2013 is absolutely phenomenal. I appreciate the gritty tone with the direction that they took with the reboot. I don't know that I want to see that tone continue moving forward with Lara Croft. I like the kind of more lighthearted Indiana Jones, Nathan Drake vibe that was on offer back in the day. But I mean, no doubt that the story is cool in Tomb Raider 2013. And actually, let's go ahead and put Rise of the Tomb Raider on the A tier as well. I'll rank the order for them in a second, but I think they're both so close. It's really hard for me to pick one over the other, but they're so damn close. I think with Tomb Raider 2013 having a slightly more linear, slightly more focused approach to just the level design, the game design in general, I usually gravitate towards that. However, with Rise of the Tomb Raider, some of my favorite puzzles ever are in this game. One in particular, like the very movement based, timing based puzzle where it's like a chandelier or some shit that you're jumping around on, and you're having to time your jumps precisely and hang on to things and drop down onto these different beams, these different ledges. It's a fucking fantastic, fantastic puzzle. And I mean, just the fact that Rise of the Tomb Raider was developed specifically for 8th gen, systems. Rise of the Tomb Raider was just a little bit more impressive. It felt a little bit more modern. There was just a swiftness, and it was just more fluid than 2013 from the gameplay, from the platforming, the puzzle. I mean, the puzzles, like I said, are much better in Rise of the Tomb Raider because, for one, the game is just much bigger, and that would be one of the things I like more about 2013's Tomb Raider. But Rise of the Tomb Raider is a much, much bigger game overall. It's not as, open hub area. It gets a lot closer to open world territory, but there is a bunch of really cool tombs to go off and explore. There's abandoned outposts that gangs or cults or whatever have infiltrated, and you're going off and taking out those dudes one by one. And some of my favorite gameplay moments came from just kind of wandering off, but at the end of the day, I do like the linear design of 2013 a little bit more. But I think when, weighing everything against one another, I like the puzzle solving better in Rise. I like the gameplay overall more in Rise. It's more impressive on a technical level. So, I mean, I think I would have to go Rise over 2013, but it's really, really close. I mean, that's 1A, 1B. And next up, we have Batman Arkham Asylum. Once again, not quite fair. This is a replay of a game that I knew that I absolutely loved. That's definitely going in the S tier. With Batman Arkham Asylum. And I should say, Rise of the Tomb Raider and Tomb Raider 2013. Those were both the first time I played either of those games was this year. So, yeah, shout out to those games. Arkham Asylum. It is, it's so revolutionary. You've heard it a million times. It revolutionized third-person action-adventure games. It revolutionized third-person melee combat. And, it's just 1,000% true. That is just 1,000% accurate. That, counter-based intuitive flow that you feel in those Arkham games, you see that replicated and imitated in many, many other third-person action-adventure games that came after Arkham Asylum, like the Shadow of War, Shadow of Mordor games, even The Witcher 3, Sleeping Dogs, the Rockstar games. Rocksteady created something totally just game-changing with how well that combat system, how well that counter-based combat system flowed in Arkham Asylum. It was a game changer for the industry. But to me, the most impressive thing about Arkham Asylum is just the fact that the world building is so fucking impressive in that game. You have a world that, once again, feels so alive and so specifically detailed from the moment that you're taking Joker into the asylum and he's strapped up, and you just have this immersive ass feeling from moment one to the end of the game. And you got Poison Ivy's entire section that's decked out and specifically designed around her as a character. And then the Metroidvania elements where you're going and getting different abilities and different gadgets that will help you reach locations around the asylum that you couldn't get to previously. I do appreciate how they took this formula and made it much bigger and at a much larger scale with Arkham City and then into Arkham Knight. But there's something about that very, very specific design, that very intentional design with Arkham Asylum that just really hits for me on a different level. It's for sure my favorite of the trilogy, and yeah, it's in the S tier for me for sure. Now, that or Bully is very, very tough. Shit, man. Arkham Asylum or Bully. They're two totally different games, so it's hard to compare them against one another. With Tomb Raider, Rise of the Tomb Raider in 2013, it's a lot easier to look at those and go, okay, well, this is, and which, those are still tough because I think they're really close in quality, but the Bully and Arkham Asylum are just so different experiences. Like, you don't go into one expecting the same thing that you get out of the other. But I guess that's kind of the fun of these ranking videos in general, putting a bunch of shit into a pot and seeing what comes out on top. I'm really struggling right now because obviously, if I was going to recommend one of these two games to somebody in 2023, I would recommend Arkham Asylum over Bully. But I mean, in a lot of ways, that's just me recommending a PS3 game over a PS2 game. Like, I think people going into Arkham Asylum would appreciate that more in 2023. You know, playing Arkham Asylum for the first time in 2023, I think you'd be able to appreciate that more than playing Bully for the first time in 2023. And I mean, like, that is my favorite melee combat system in the history of video games. Yeah, man, I'm gonna give it to Asylum over Bully. That's really, really damn close. Those are, I mean, that's super, super fucking close. All right, and next up we have Ratchet and Clank 2016, and for this one I think I'll go B tier for Ratchet and Clank 2016. I don't think I would put it on the same level as either of those two Tomb Raider games. Undeniably really fun. The collectathon nature of 2016, Ratchet and Clank 2016, got me in a way that most, 3D platformer collectathon style games, they usually don't get me. I was actually running around trying to collect all the different damn bolts and shit. Like, I had a lot of fun with 2016. The weapon diversity is great. Some of the boss fights are incredible. The ship combat, that section of the game is so goddamn fun. But I played Rift Apart before I played 2016. So Rift Apart, the PS5, all the features and the SSD, and you're seeing the instant world swapping and all that cool shit take place. That was so mind-blowing to me when I was playing Rift Apart, that, going back to 2016, it leaves a little bit to be desired. Obviously, if I would have played 2016 first and then played Rift Apart, it might have been a similar feeling that I had with Rift Apart, where I was like, oh, well, this is kind of similar to 2016, just a more modernized, next-genified version of it. So, I mean, that's not even like an indictment on the game's quality whatsoever. That was just, hey, I played Rift Apart before 2016, and naturally that is going to affect how I feel about going back and playing the older games after playing the newer games. That's kind of my fault. And next up we have Gears of War 1, and I think I'd put this on the A tier. Actually, I don't know. I think I'm going to drop it to the B tier. I would put it above Ratchet and Clank 2016, but I think I would place it below both of the Tomb Raider games for sure. Gears of War 1, my favorite thing about that game is, well, for one, I love the horror tone. Whenever they really lean into the horror of Gears of War, it is actually pretty damn creepy, very atmospheric. Staying in the light, having to stay in the light to avoid the birds, having the boss fight where the big ass boss jumps out at you, this immediate jump scare that takes place, and then you're having to dodge him, and he's running into these different poles, and he has to knock over these poles to open up enough light for you to, get the gun and kill the motherfucker. And I mean, driving the tank and having the birds, flying at you, and you're shooting the light beams at them. Like, there's some really fun ass elements of Gears of War. I mean, just taking that damn, shotgun chainsaw thing and ripping an enemy in half. It's just a really fun, third person shooter action game. Like, straight up balls to the wall fun throughout the entire experience. A decent enough story, decent enough presentation. It's not, I think my biggest knock on Gears of War 1 is that it's just stiff. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of that could be contributed to it releasing in 2005, if I'm not mistaken. So it's taking that actually, I think it was 2006. I don't think it launched with the 360, but it's taking what Resident Evil 4 created, and it is tinkering with that formula enough. And I mean, having the moving and aiming, moving and shooting, that's a pretty big next step in that over-the-shoulder perspective that was created with RE4. So I think I can forgive a lot of that sluggishness, that stiffness, because they were making advancements to that formula, and this was, really early on in that process. Now, I have no idea whatsoever what the future of these games hold. Like, I don't know if they refine the shooting and they refine the movement quite a bit, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely sluggish, but it didn't really hurt my experience all that much. And after playing it, I am very excited to go through and finish the rest of the games in the franchise, because I mean, I think it took me like 5-6 hours to beat the first Gears of War. So if they're all pretty short in their main story campaigns, I'll run through all those bad boys before we get to Gears 6, which I think will be either revealed. Hell, it could be revealed at the Game Awards. I'm recording this before the Game Awards. It could be. I don't fucking know. It could be revealed at the Game Awards. It's looking like, what's the point? I'm not going to put this out until after the Game Awards, so let's not speculate about the Game Awards. But I think without a doubt, Gears 6 is going to be revealed, if not at the Game Awards, then Summer Games Fest, or, the 2024 Summer Xbox Showcase. I think that game is coming soon, so I definitely need to get on the Gears 2 and beyond next year. All right, and then going from a badass third-person shooter to a badass first-person shooter, we have the Fear 1, my first time jumping into Fear this year. And I'd put it below Ratchet & Clank 2016, but yeah, it would definitely be on that B tier for me. It's, a very early 7th generation sort of launch window title, early 360 game, and it's impressive when looking back, from a visual standpoint, from a gameplay standpoint as well. I think it just holds up pretty well across the board, having some of that Max Payne inspiration with the slowdown mechanic. And also you see a lot of Half-Life inspiration just with the level layout and the level design in general with Fear. It's just a really well-made game. It is a very, very easy game. Playing through it on the normal difficulty, you will not struggle whatsoever. It is a very, very simple game, and as you guys know, I do not mind that shit whatsoever. But listen, it's not a story that's just going to totally blow your mind. It does have a cool dark twist in it, and it kind of leans into that psychological horror aspect. But overall, it's not like the most mind-blowing video game of all time. It's just really damn fun. It's an enjoyable 4 or 5 hours that you'll spend running through the story. And next up here we have Quantum Break. And I'm gonna go C tier for Quantum Break. I think you see the making of Control with Quantum Break, with the third person shooting. And Quantum Break, you have the time manipulation going on, and where in Control you have the telekinetic abilities, and you're seeing Remedy sort of age into Control while playing through Quantum Break, which I do definitely appreciate that. But that damn live action emphasis, the emphasis on the live action story elements, I mean, holy shit, they lean into that so heavily with Quantum Break. And I understand that that's kind of Remedy, that they've always tried to do that, and supposedly they really nailed it with Alan Wake 2, and I can't wait until they put that fucking thing on a disc. But I just do not think that it worked with the pacing of Quantum Break whatsoever. There would be times, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to play Quantum Break for an hour. I'm going to jump in for an hour before work. And you play it for 20 minutes, you finish the level, and then you get hit with a 20-minute live action cutscene, and you're like, oh shit, okay, well, I only have 20 more minutes to play the damn game. And I mean that literally, or at least close to literally. There are live action movie scenes in here that are like 15-20 minutes long, and you can throw those complaints out with Kojima and the classic MGS games. There's a bunch of games where you can be like, man, how the fuck you got this amount of cutscenes in your game. So I get it that it's a criticism that you can throw out at a bunch of other games, but this is combining live action cutscenes with the actual in-game cutscenes, so it amounts to a whole hell of a lot more, and it just feels a little bit overwhelming at times. Regardless, still a solid game. The third person shooting is fun. It is visually, I mean, one of the best looking games from that generation. It is a sight to behold visually. And I think when you're playing it for like 3-4 hours straight, it really, you start to get into a good rhythm with it, where when the live action cutscenes take place, you're like, okay, cool. You kind of, you're like, all right, I'm going to put the controller down for a second. I'm just going to go and get a snack. I'm going to chill and watch this, and then I'll get back into the gameplay. Like, there is some flow you can find with it if you're binging the game. But if you're just trying to play through it for, an hour and 30 minutes at a time, something like that, I think it has a hard time getting its rhythm and getting its pacing together. And next up, we move on to Outlast 2. And that is definitely a D tier game for me. I know people love the Outlast franchise. I'm not here to shit on you. It's just not for me. It is just not for me. And I will say the story in Outlast 2 is really good. Particularly the ending is fantastic. Absolutely phenomenal. They swing for the fences. Honestly, I think like the last 30, 45 minutes of the game are excellent. But the first 5-6 hours or whatever, it's a slog for me, man. It's a real slog for me just to continuously walk around, run from an enemy, walk around, get transported into the school, run up and down the hallway, the same fucking hallway that I've seen over and over again, trigger the scene that'll get me back to the real game world that you're exploring with these cultists running around like madmen. From a moment to moment gameplay perspective, to me, it's just not really engaging at all. And staying on theme here, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 also going in the D tier. I'll for sure put Outlast 2 above The Amazing Spider-Man 2. This thing was just atrocious. Absolutely atrocious. Trying to pretty much replicate the Arkham Asylum formula, for combat with Spider-Man, and forgetting that you can't really put the camera right up Spider-Man's ass because he's so agile and constantly moving around, whereas Batman's more of a tank, more of a brute. He can just kind of stand still, parry, block, punch. Like, the Spider-Man is moving all over the fucking place. And you'll get into moments where you're swinging around as Spider-Man and the camera is just so tight up this dude's ass, and it's like, man, that how in the hell did this get released? It's just a weird, wonky, buggy game. I hated it when I played it back in the day in like 2014, and I still hate it just as much playing through it in 2023. Metal Gear Solid 3. I didn't really know what to do with this one because, I mean, it did release in 2023. I played the Master Collection, whatever the hell you want to call it, but it's just the Blue Point game. It's just the Blue Point game ported over to PS5. I love, I should say I like Metal Gear Solid 3 a lot. It's my least favorite of the Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, and 3. 3 is my least favorite, but it's still a fucking great game. So I'll put it in the A tier. I think I will keep it below both of the Tomb Raider games, though. I understand and appreciate that Metal Gear had to evolve with 3. I just didn't really love where it evolved to, having such a strict survival focus to the gameplay, going off and camouflaging yourself and going off and, fucking killing the different wildlife and eating the wildlife and cleaning up your bullet wounds and then taking the bandage and the ointment and then pulling out the fucking the gunshot with the knife. I get that was definitely a revolutionary kind of advancement for Metal Gear at the time in 2004, but playing it in 2023, it's a little bit of a slog. It's still, a fucking incredible story. The story of Metal Gear Solid 3 is so goddamn good. The gameplay is strong enough. Some of the best boss fights ever in Metal Gear Solid franchise history take place in MGS3, so you definitely got to give it love. And even though it's not one of my personal favorite Metal Gear Solid games, it's still a fucking objectively great video game. And yeah, looking at the B tier, I definitely wouldn't, even just from a personal kind of subjective feeling of the game, I enjoy MGS3 more than anything on the B tier. Oh boy, and talking about subjective, next we have Alpha Protocol, and oh man, I gotta put this on the S tier. This is another one that is a replay. You know what? Here, this will be an easy way to clean this up. I just added a replay tier to the top of the list, so I'll move all of the games that were replay titles into one tier, and then that way we can kind of get an accurate ranking for the backlog, and then we'll do a separate ranking for the replays. Hopefully that's not too convoluted, too complicated to do right in the middle of this fucking video. I should probably work on doing some damn pre-production in the future to prevent this, but hey, here we are. Alpha Protocol. This is, once again, incredibly subjective. Alpha Protocol has so many warts, so many issues. The gameplay is not tremendous. You know what? I will say with Alpha Protocol regarding the gameplay, it gets so much better as you upgrade your character. And if you really put emphasis in your shooting or your melee combat, like, the gameplay will reflect that, and you will eventually be playing a pretty competent third-person shooter or just third-person action-adventure game if you allocate your upgrade points appropriately. And I mean, once again, from a purely subjective basis, this is like one of my dream games. You know, we don't have games like this at all. We have 852 fantasy RPGs, but we do not have any spy RPG video games. It's like, you know, taking Metal Gear but having a BioWare-esque formula where you're making different dialogue decisions, and you can, I mean, there's real agency, real weight in the decision making with Alpha Protocol. You can side with people, and that will lead you into a totally different, like, entire mission path, or, you know, siding with a character and they bring their entire army with you to take on, you know, to take on the enemies. You go in on a fucking tank with this damn dictator or some shit. Like, there is real weight in the narrative with the decision making in Alpha Protocol. I'm not going to try to excuse all the clunk and all the issues that people have with this game. I totally understand when people have their complaints with Alpha Protocol. Usually I get where they're coming from, but for me personally, you know, I loved this thing when I played it for the first time, and going back to it this year, it was just like reaffirming to me, where I was like, yeah, this is one of my favorite RPGs of all time. I know that sounds crazy, but this is like the exact dream game that I would want with a spy RPG. You know, maybe a little bit more refined, but the foundation is like a dream video game for me. So yeah, I mean, I would put it under Bully and Batman Arkham Asylum. I'm not gonna go too crazy, but I would put it above Metal Gear Solid 3. All right, and next up we have Spider-Man Web of Shadows. And actually, let's rank all three of these 7th generation Spider-Man games together at once. And it's a weird thing where I think I went through, there was only one of these. I think Shattered Dimensions was the only one I'd ever played through and finished before. So we'll throw that one in the replay tier, and we'll rank it here in a second. Web of Shadows and Edge of Time. I think this year was the first time I finished either of these games. So I'm going to include those in the backlog. Web of Shadows I would put on the B tier, I think. Yeah, I think I would go B tier. I mean, for just the originality, the uniqueness alone, I think I would have to put it on the B tier. The fact that you can play as Spider-Man and make decisions in this game that actually, I mean, I'm not saying it has an incredible consequence or anything, but you can kind of become the evil Spider-Man or be, you know, straight up the good, amazing Spider-Man, and have those crazy moments where you fucking, spoiler alert, skip ahead 15 seconds, but the moment where you rip Wolverine in half, and those meme moments that have taken place and have kind of gained a new life of their own from Web of Shadows. I mean, it just is a unique concept, getting to make bad decisions as the most beloved kind of pure-hearted good guy character with Spider-Man. It is a cool concept. And I mean, there are even gameplay elements here in Web of Shadows that you don't really see replicated in any other Spider-Man game, and maybe for good reason in some instances, like where you can fight alongside buildings in Web of Shadows. Like, you can run alongside buildings and fight enemies who are scaling the buildings, so you have an entirely new kind of playground to fight on, and you'll have enemies who are flying up at you as you're on the building, and you can web zip to the enemy. And they have a really weird feature where you can essentially like kickflip and link together attacks. So an enemy will be approaching you, flying up at you, you web zip to him, you kickflip off of him and you zip to the next enemy if you time the button prompt appropriately. Unfortunately, I did run into quite a few bugs with Web of Shadows. I had one that was like totally game breaking where I had to reset the game and boot the mission back up from the beginning, which was definitely annoying. I ran into quite a bit of frame rate issues just swinging throughout the world. So, I mean, it definitely has its flaws, but it has its positive aspects to it as well. Definitely one I would recommend checking out if you can get it for a decent price and you are a fan of Spider-Man. Now, moving on to Edge of Time, however, I don't know, A tier might be a bit much. I would definitely put it higher than Web of Shadows. I think I would put it above Fear. I would go above Ratchet and Clank. I think I would go right below. No, I would go above Gears of War 1 as well, I think. Edge of Time is just, well, for one, it's beautiful. It is absolutely fucking beautiful to look at. But I love in this game that a big focus is avoiding combat at times. And, you know, saving a civilian, getting them out of a building before the building destructs or before the building blows up or whatever. And you have these like little timed events where, yeah, you'll have hordes of enemies coming at you, hordes of bad guys trying to take you on, but you actually have to plan out strategically how to get around them opposed to just running straight through them, which I do feel like is a major role in what Spider-Man does, but you don't often get to experience that in-game form. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it does have like a cool character action-y feel to it with the combat system. It's fast, it's fluid, it's a very linear, tight, focused experience, which once again, I just appreciate that when you're going back to replay a game. The story's surprisingly good. Like, it's a legitimately just really good overall video game and a great Spider-Man video game, I would say. Now, for Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, I will, for the replay tier here, I'll go below Metal Gear Solid 3, definitely way, way, way above The Amazing Spider-Man 2. This would be above Edge of Time for me as well. This would probably be like right below Tomb Raider 2013 on the A tier, if I wasn't, categorizing it as a replay. But yeah, this is a fucking fun ass video game, and once again, really, really weird. It's a really weird, quirky game where at times you'll go into a first person mode and you're essentially Mike Tyson, ducking and dodging, throwing punches in a little boxing mini game that pops up. It's really, really bizarre, but the main hook of Shattered Dimensions is so sick. You're playing as 4 different Spider-Man. You're playing as Spider-Man Noir, The Amazing Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man, and 2099. And each character has their own distinct visual style. Their world looks distinct and different from the other Spider-Men. And there's even like different gameplay stylings on offer at times, especially with Spider-Man Noir. It feels much more like a Batman Arkham Asylum experience where you're going through and stealth taking down the enemies one by one. And whenever you get into the boss fights, it's a lot about staying in the shadows and avoiding, being detected. And then with 2077, it's a lot more DMC, quick, fast, kind of character action style gameplay. And then Ultimate Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man are somewhat similar in their gameplay. But the thing for me that really puts this game on a different level is the Deadpool level. It is one of my favorite levels ever in a superhero video game, ever, ever, ever. It is so damn solid. From a traversal standpoint, from a gameplay standpoint, from the satire, the how they set up Deadpool, how they set up this level and build it around Deadpool so specifically, it is just absolutely freaking fantastic. And this is another, linear level by level structure to Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. You just go level by level. It's a different boss for each level. They have a fucking who's list of bosses that you're running through, and also some more obscure characters that you don't see much at all in Spider-Man video games. So it's really sick. And next up, we have another one of these weird ones here. Grand Theft Auto 4. I played it before, but this year in 2023 was my first time ever finishing it. So I'm going to keep it in the backlog, in the S through D range. I'm not going to put it in the replay category. Grand Theft Auto 4. Yeah, I'll put it in the A tier. I'll put it above anything that is in the B tier, but I would put it below both of the Tomb Raider games. It's just, it has some age on it, for sure. The shooting, I think, at the time was honestly, even at the time when you're looking at stuff like Gears of War and the Resident Evil games and just how third person shooters had evolved in 2008 or 2009 when GTA 4 came out, it was just outdated. You know what I mean? Still having that lock on system, and then whenever you would switch to the more dynamic, control that where you actually had control over where you were aiming the reticle and shit, like it just didn't have that snappy feel to it that you would see with GTA 5 and Red Dead 2. But there is one thing about GTA 4 that is much stronger than any of the other Rockstar games, and that is the agency that you have with the story, with the narrative, actually getting to make decisions in this game about who lives and who dies, and then even, with the very end of the game getting to make a decision that can shape your ending. This is something that I really, really want to see Rockstar bring back in a big way. That shit is it's just so engaging. You know what I mean? You're just so much more connected and immersed with what's going on in the storytelling when you feel like you have a small part in shaping it. And those moments in GTA 4, with the dude on the roof and you're chasing him down and you can choose to kill him or to spare him, like those are moments that are so much more memorable to me than most of the story beats that take place in Rockstar games, because once again, I was so much more invested because I was choosing what happened. And I mean, the storytelling overall is just really, really strong. One of, if not the best, Grand Theft Auto stories of all time. And now heading over to Beyond Good and Evil. This is another replay. I would go, where would I rank this on the replay tier? Above both of the Spider-Man games for sure. Would I rank it above MGS3? I don't know. I think I actually would, man. I think I would put the first Beyond Good and Evil above Metal Gear Solid 3. And for one, it's just, in my opinion, it's so fucking impressive just how ambitious this thing is. Having your watercraft that you're going off, and you can go in and get into races and all the different mini games, the chase mini games, and going in and playing air hockey and the little, it's not tarot cards, what is it, where the dude has, it's like he's a magician and you got to kind of try to guess where he's moving the ball, and you can get different you can get money by guessing correctly, and then combining that with the gameplay, with the stealth focus, having some of those action adventure elements, the melee combat going on, and the photography. And I don't want to spoil anything, so go ahead and skip ahead like 45 seconds or so to avoid any Beyond Good and Evil 1 spoilers if you want to jump into the game for the first time. But the fucking ending where you get to, you go off into space, you get a damn spaceship, and you're flying around in space. Like, there was already so much going on in this game with a deceptively deep, interesting, hard-hitting story. And then, all the mini games that we talked about, combining that with the stealth, combining that with the action-adventure style gameplay, the photography, all that shit. But to cap off with such a definitive, unbelievably ambitious feature that they really don't utilize all that much. It's just like this one big holy shit moment. It's mind-blowing. It's impressive as fuck. So yeah, I'm gonna keep Beyond Good and Evil above Metal Gear Solid 3, but below the critically beloved Alpha Protocol. And next up, we got Resident Evil Revelations, another replay on the chopping block here. I would put Revelations definitely above The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I think I would put Shattered Dimensions above Resident Evil Revelations. I think Shattered Dimensions is just so goddamn unique. But I mean, Revelations is really cool too. The constant perspective swapping with Revelations, that being the first game in the Resident Evil franchise that would allow you to move and shoot. That was a game-breaking feature that was added. I mean, you kind of had that with Outbreak, but with this new modernized version of Resident Evil, that was really, really important to push the franchise in just like the objectively correct direction that third person shooters were taking on, and how they were evolving. Like Resident Evil with 5, it seemed like it really wanted to keep what made RE4 and not tinker with that format much at all with the gameplay, with how the third person shooting felt and controlled. And Revelations was just that pivotal step forward into the new era of third-person shooters. So you definitely got to respect it there. And I mean, like I said, the perspective swapping with Chris and Jill and I forget the other two dudes who you get to play as well, the more kind of side characters. But my favorite thing about Revelations was the ship setting. It's just the perfect setting, this huge ass cruise ship that actually ends up feeling a lot like, an RPD, or a lot like the mansion. And because it's stacked, man. It's a humongous fucking cruise ship, and each location feels distinctly different. It doesn't feel like you're just going around and seeing the exact same things as you're exploring the different, levels to this ship, which I think would have been very easy for Capcom to do, to make this thing feel very fucking repetitive, and it does not at all. And I think that, for one, the perspective swapping definitely helps there, of course, but just the level design and just having all of these rooms feel so much different from one another. You rarely get lost. You're rarely doing any backtracking, because the world is just created so intentionally with a real focus on keeping, each level creative and each level feeling different from the last. My biggest damn complaint with the game is just that final boss fight is cheesy as shit. And it's one of those games where if you can't swap the difficulty on the fly. So when I'm getting destroyed by that damn final boss, I just kind of got to sit there and eat it until I can figure the shit out. And I never really felt like I figured out the correct solution or the correct route to take during that battle encounter. I just ended up getting lucky and getting through it, which never feels great. So yeah, I'm going to keep it below Shattered Dimensions on the replay tier, but it is still a really good game. And I'm glad that I went back and replayed it. Definitely not like a bad experience at all. And similarly to Grand Theft Auto 4 here, we have Alan Wake, a game that I played but did not finish. I actually didn't enjoy it at all when I played it the first time, and I went back and finished it this year. I actually finished this just last month. I think I would put Alan Wake in the B tier, but I think I would actually go the top of the B tier for Alan Wake. It is just such a bizarre experience. I think Brightfall as a location is just so special. I mean, having that moment where you're walking through for the first time, you're like walking into the diner and everyone's reacting to you as if you're this huge celebrity, and it's this really weird, bizarre mindfuck that is taking place, and almost everything about Brightfall is such a mindfuck. And I don't know, it was just one of those games when I played it the first time, I didn't really understand what it wanted from me. I was playing it like a Resident Evil game, and I just couldn't really figure out what the fuck I was doing wrong. And then, going back to it and playing it this time, I realized, oh, it's an action game. It doesn't want to be a traditional kind of survival horror experience. It's an action horror experience. It wants you to unload every goddamn clip. It does not want you to spare any resources, and it doesn't focus on that at all. You're always going to constantly have enough resources to get through. When I got to the moment where you were able to drive the car, that was when I really began to appreciate just how ambitious this game was. That's not a easy thing to incorporate into your survival horror game. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying it's the most robust or just the best experience you'll ever have controlling a vehicle in a video game world, but it's totally functional, taking the vehicle off-roading or smashing it into enemies, or just, like I said, exploring, doing some off-roading with the Jeep, going out and finding a cabin out in the middle of nowhere and looking around. It just adds something that is very, very different from what you would traditionally get with survival horror games. I think the story is absolutely incredible, consistently incredible. I don't really think it ever hits a low point at all. It is through and through a really, really engaging narrative. I do still think there is some clunk in that gameplay. I don't think Alan Wake controls particularly well, which it could be intended, in the design of how the character moves and shit, but at times it doesn't feel the best to play as Alan Wake, doing the sprint and running out of breath and trying to do the dodge and having the dodge and sprint be the same button. That can be a bit clunky for a lack of a better term. So yeah, I think that would prevent it from, getting into that A tier range, but it definitely top of B tier feels appropriate. It's for sure the best story by a mile out of any of the games on the B tier, and I would probably say maybe the most ambitious game out of anything on this B tier. Right there with Gears of War 1. All right, and now it's time to really get spicy. Mass Effect Andromeda. Um, I know people hate this game, and I gotta say, when I played it for the first time, I only played a little bit of it. When I booted it up for the first time, it did not connect with me whatsoever. But replaying it this year, I played through the entire game. I put a ton of time into this thing, and it's far and away the best gameplay, moment-to-moment gameplay feel that you have ever had with, I would argue, any BioWare game ever, but definitely any Mass Effect game ever. Man, I'm going to drop this in the A tier. We'll sort out the, individual order for where I would rank it, amongst these different games in the A tier, but yeah, I would put it in the A tier, no doubt about it. I mean, that gameplay is just so fucking good. Having the jetpack, boosting around, dodging out of the way, using the jetpack to do some platforming. Like, there's just things in Mass Effect Andromeda that are far and away more impressive, merely from a moment-to-moment gameplay perspective. I do think you can throw some real complaints at the main story. The main story does not hit nearly as hard as any of the other. I don't know. I think I would say it doesn't hit even as hard as Mass Effect 3. Definitely not anywhere near as hard as Mass Effect 1 or 2. But I would say it's the worst main story out of all out of all four of the Mass Effect games. However, the side quests in Andromeda fucking rule. And there are a ton of them to go and get lost with. And I mean, like, the main bulk companion quests, I don't understand why they weren't incorporated into the main narrative as like must complete missions to see credits roll. Because that's always something I worry about with these RPGs when people are reviewing the games. Are they jumping straight into the main path and completing that, and then that way they can get their review out on time when they're, being rushed to hit a fucking deadline. And I'm not trying to say that the reason this game reviewed poorly or whatever was because of that. When it launched, this thing was in a really rough shape. A character's eyes bugging out of their head and shit. I saw many glitches when this thing launched back in the day, I think in 2016 or 17. So no doubt when people played it at launch, they had very just and very real critiques for Mass Effect Andromeda. But I played it on the Series X this year, and I really didn't run into any like major bugs whatsoever. It ran incredibly well. It was smooth as shit. I mean, listen, I'm not saying like the character models in general don't look like fucking Horizon Forbidden West or God of War or anything like that. But honestly, I think a lot of that can probably be chalked up to having to work on Frostbite for the first time, and then having to go in and kind of reprogram and relearn everything and transport or really create all these assets and shit from the ground up to be able to even be used, in the Frostbite engine, an engine that was developed for the fucking, first person shooters and shit that EA was cranking out. It wasn't an engine that was designed around third person action adventure, space opera RPGs. And I mean, I'm not trying to totally give BioWare a pass for this game, but you have to remember that this was like the worst version of EA ever in this era, the 2015 to like 2019 era of EA, which obviously, you saw that in the worst way a couple years later with BioWare when they were forced to crank out Anthem. So listen, it's undeniably awful that the game launched in the state that it did. But once again, playing it this year, playing through it and finishing it for the first time this year, I just did not run into those same issues that most people had at launch. And I really loved that loop of just going around and trying to make these different planets habitable and driving the Nomad and taking that bitch down different paths and seeing what you could, there's a cave over there, I'm gonna go and run and explore here. And I'm not saying it's the most elaborate or most intentionally designed open world that I've ever seen in my life, but having these big open planets to go and roam around and explore and having like actual objectives on each planet, that was fun to me personally. Once again, I highly recommend, if you plan on jumping back into Mass Effect Andromeda, do those like main companion quests, do a lot of the side quests, because that's where you'll find like the real high quality bar of the game. The main story is whatever. The side quests with this game are fucking fantastic, man. But now the difficult part. Where does it rank on this A tier? I I would go above GTA 4. I don't think I would go above either of the Tomb Raider games. I know people are lighting the torches right now after I put this damn thing above Grand Theft Auto 4, but for me personally, I would put it above GTA 4. I wouldn't put it above either of the Tomb Raider games though. And next up we have DMC5, another one that is for sure absolutely in the A tier. And yeah, I mean that's actually where I would place it. I'd place it below GTA 4 at the bottom of the A tier, but for sure, fucking A tier game. So fun. The gameplay loop of DMC5 is so goddamn fun. You know, having the 3 different characters that you're swapping between, each of them having a unique play style and different upgrade paths and different weapons that they can use. The story's much better than it has any right to be. The visuals with this thing are absolutely breathtaking. There's a couple boss fights that are like god tier video game boss fights. It's just a really fun ass game across the board. I don't have many complaints for it whatsoever. But even though I do have complaints for something like a Grand Theft Auto 4, that style of game, you know, the open world sandbox, crime simulator, whatever the hell you want to call it, that's just much more up my alley than something like a Devil May Cry 5. I love, you know, character action games, but the open world sandbox is probably my favorite genre, right there with, you know, action RPGs, survival horror, open world sandbox games. Like, that's just my shit. Now heading on over to Tomb Raider Legend. This is comfortably in the B tier. I'd put it above Web of Shadows, above Fear, above Ratchet & Clank 2016, right below Gears of War for Tomb Raider Legend. This was genuinely a blast to play through. I really didn't expect anything of it. I saw it on sale for super cheap. I picked it up. I was like, all right, let's see what Tomb Raider Legend has to offer. And it felt a lot like James Bond Everything or Nothing from the PS2 era, with, you know, having the motorcycle elements and having the elements where you're rappelling down the side of a building. And I mean, like the scene where you're in the hotel or the casino or whatever the hell it is, and you take out the different goons, you run up to the top of the building, you jump down through the glass, you hop on the motorcycle, you rev that bitch up, you take off, you make a jump from this one building onto another. There's these cool ass moments that are just, once again, it's so stylized and so like joyful and jovial and kind of more lighthearted. It felt much more fun, you know, talking about Tomb Raider 2013 and Rise of the Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider Legend just felt so much more fun overall. I like the other games more. They're better, you know, just I would say higher quality video game experiences in my opinion. But Tomb Raider Legend was just really damn fun. The shooting, you know, it's outdated. It has like kind of the lock-on system, but at the in that era, the PS2 era, that was just kind of the standard for third-person shooters. I mean, at this point, you know, you could argue that we were definitely beginning to phase that system out, but I don't know, when you incorporate the motorcycle elements, the platforming, the puzzle solving, a surprisingly decent story about Laura and her mom, like when you combine all of that together, I can forgive somewhat lackluster third-person shooting. But yeah, really fun game. I'm going to rank it right below Gears of War, right above Ratchet & Clank 2016 in the B tier. Oxenfree 1. I'm going to drop that in the C tier. Really great writing, really good narrative, some of the most natural dialogue I've ever experienced in a game. It's just kind of boring to play through. You know what I mean? I appreciate the supernatural elements of it. I appreciate some of the twists and turns with the narrative, but you know, after the 7 or so hours that I spent with it, not really a game I thought about much at all, other than just being like, damn, that was really well written. The character interaction flowed so seamlessly, so naturally, but I didn't necessarily care about the story. I just think the dialogue itself was so well written. I don't necessarily mean the story was incredibly well written. Like there wasn't really a hook there that I was super invested in seeing through. I was just more kind of down for the ride with the characters. So yeah, C tier, I would put it below Quantum Break. BioShock 2. I am gonna go, let's go B tier for BioShock 2. Probably really close to actually maybe the top Yeah, I think I would put it above Alan Wake 1. BioShock 2 would go above Alan Wake 1 in the B tier. Atmosphere, fucking 10 out of 10 for sure. You know, playing as the Big Daddy is such a cool hook with BioShock 2. And I think they go in some impressive directions narratively, like the final kind of act with Eleanor and the revelation that happens there. And I just think it's cool that reveal kind of also has gameplay connective tissue there, like it what the revelation that takes place on a narrative front also incorporates into the gameplay, and your experience of evolves drastically after that big moment with Eleanor. But yeah, I mean, the different powers and abilities you get throughout the game, electrocuting motherfuckers, taking that, just having the drill, you know, playing as the Big Daddy and just having the drill as a weapon in your arsenal and upgrading it and being able to like deflect bullets and shit, conjuring up tornadoes, spinning them bitches at enemies. Like, there is so many fun gameplay, just fun, versatile, different abilities on offer to keep the gameplay feeling fresh throughout the entire experience. Actually, now that I'm like talking about it and thinking about it, dude, I think I would put BioShock 2 in the A tier. That game's fun as shit. I'm gonna put it below DMC5 in you know, at the bottom of the A tier. BioShock 2 definitely an A tier game for me. All right, and now we have the title that I finished most recently, and that is The Artful Escape. This is one of the most beautiful games I've ever played in my life. I'll have you know, a trailer rolling for you so you can see the fucking visuals on this thing. It is just gorgeous to look at, man. There's not a ton going on mechanically. It's a really unbelievably simple game. You're not going to be challenged much at all while playing it. It's like a 2D side-scrolling adventure game, some very light platforming elements, some very light music rhythm elements. You're playing as this guitar player and you're transported into this psychedelic fantasy world. It's 100% art style, the video game. It is just straight up hitting you with some of the most beautiful, impressive visuals you've ever seen in your life constantly. But it's not offering up a ton outside of that. So I think I would have to drop this in the, I think I would go C tier, but I would go the top of the C tier for sure. That's close to a B tier style game for me. The story is really good. It's just it's super simple, which I do not mind whatsoever, but I don't think I would put it on the same tier with something like Web of Shadows or Fear. I don't think I would place it in that range. I don't believe it's close though. All right, so there we have it. That is the final ranking for the replay and the backlog games of the year. I'll rattle these off in order for you real quick. I'll have the numerical ranking on the screen so that you can see the list. First up, for the replay list, we have number 1, Batman Arkham Asylum, number 2, Bully, number 3, Alpha Protocol, number 4, Beyond Good and Evil, number 5, Metal Gear Solid 3, number 6, Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, number 7, Resident Evil Revelations 1, and number 8, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, moving on to the backlog list, we have number 1, Rise of the Tomb Raider, number 2, 2013's Tomb Raider, number 3, Mass Effect Andromeda, number 4, GTA 4, number 5, DMC 5, number 6, BioShock 2, number 7, Alan Wake 1, number 8, Spider-Man Edge of Time, number 9, Gears of War 1, number 10, Tomb Raider Legend, number 11, Ratchet & Clank 2016, number 12, Fear, number 13, Spider-Man Web of Shadows, number 14, The Artful Escape, number 15, Quantum Break, number 16, Oxenfree 1, and number 17, last on the backlog list, we have Outlast 2. So that is going to be it for me today, guys. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. I appreciate y'all for stopping by for some backlog and replay rankings here today on the channel. The Game of the Year ranking will be up very soon. And speaking of Game of the Year, I'm coming to you here from the future. I figured what better time than now to go over your game of the year selections so far that I've done on my community tab here on YouTube. I wanted to wait about a week or so, and it has been now, as you see, I think on the screen, it has been 8 days since I put up the final polls. So figured we would go through and talk about your game of the year voting so far and go ahead and lock in your next round of matchups. All right, so as you see here on the first vote that went up, we had Forza Motorsport, Octopath Traveler 2, Starfield, Wolong, and Planet of Lana, and you guys selected Octopath. So I'm gonna jot these down, that way I can have them ready to go when we push them into the next round. And y'all did Starfield dirty. I'm never gonna forgive you all for that. But Octopath Traveler 2 is moving on. And then our second matchup of 10 here, we had Diablo 4, Tears of the Kingdom, Thirsty Suitors, Dave the Diver, and Killer Frequency. And of course, no surprise there, Totka moves on to the next round. And then we have Cocoon, RE4, Alan Wake 2, Sea of Stars, and Talos Principle 2. RE4 is going to be moving on to the next round. And this was the close one. I was actually waiting on this one to see if that vote number changed at all, to see if anybody else wanted to jump in on this one. This is super, super close, man. Bramble the Mountain King, Armored Core 6, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Like a Dragon Ishin, and Super Mario Bros. Wonder. And, Super Mario Bros. Wonder winning with 29% of the vote. Armored Core 6 and Star Wars Jedi Survivor with 28%. So we're talking literally one vote away from this being a totally different situation for 3 different games. So Super Mario Bros. Is moving on to the next round. All right. And then we have here F-099, Viewfinder, Remnant 2, and Spider-Man 2 in a big... Oh, and Humanity. I'm sorry, Humanity. 1% of the vote. I forgot about you. The people forgot about you. I apologize, Humanity. Spider-Man 2 is obviously winning that one in a landslide. So this is your first bracket of 5 that we'll have locked in. It will be Octopath Traveler 2, Totka, Resident Evil 4, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and Spider-Man 2. All right, so now we begin creating our second list of 5. Here we go. Chia, Dead Space, Chance of Sonar, Lords of the Fallen, and Pizza Tower were the nominees, and Dead Space ran away with a very decisive victory. And then we have Lies of P, Street Fighter 6, RoboCop Rogue City, Final Fantasy 16, and Pikmin 4. Pretty close here between FF16 and Lies of P, but FF16 takes the win there. And next we have Vinba, Theater Rhythm, Final Bar Line, Wild Hearts, Mortal Kombat 1, and Cassette Beast. MK1 is moving on into the next round. We have Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty, Turbo Overkill, Bayonetta Origins, Cersera and the Lost Demon, Assassin's Creed Mirage, and Fire Emblem Engage. Phantom Liberty moving on to the next round. And for our final list of the first round, the first list of matchups, whatever the hell you want to call it, you get the point. Hogwarts Legacy versus Dredge versus Like a Dragon, Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name, Baldur's Gate 3, and Hi-Fi Rush. And this was somewhat close. I remember when I first put it up, it was pretty damn close for a little while between Hogwarts Legacy and Baldur's Gate 3, but BG3 pulled away in a big manner towards the end of the vote here. And now for the list of 5 that will be matched up against each other going into the next round, we have Dead Space, Final Fantasy 16, Mortal Kombat 1, Phantom Liberty, and Baldur's Gate 3. So I'll put up a graphic on the screen so you can see the final 10 games and each of the matchups that you will see rolled out to you in poll fashion sometime very soon that you can vote on, and probably the day after I put this video up, which I'm hoping to get up tomorrow. But whenever this goes up, the day after this video goes up, head over to that community tab and I will have these polls up and ready to go for you good people to vote on. So yeah, man, exciting times. Here is the list of our final 10. In the first bracket, we have Octopath Traveler 2, Totka, Resident Evil 4, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and Spider-Man 2. In the second bracket, we have Dead Space, Final Fantasy 16, Mortal Kombat 1, Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty, and Baldur's Gate 3. And obviously, whichever game gets the most votes in bracket 1 will move on to face whichever game gets the most votes in bracket 2 as your one-on-one, head-to-head game of the year grand finale matchup. And you'll be able to vote on that as well. I honestly have no idea what the hell you guys are going to pick as your winner. I honestly, dude, I don't even know what you guys are going to pick for either of these brackets. This is really competitive 2 brackets here. I think you guys made some damn good selections, other than, yeah, y'all did Starfield so dirty. Y'all did Starfield so dirty. That breaks my cold heart, man. But I still think this is a really strong top 10, and I'm excited to see how you guys vote. And whatever you all end up selecting as your game of the year, that will be represented at my end year award show, where I do the first ever 2023 Unnecessary Game Award show. I can't even fucking speak correctly, but the Unnecessary Game Awards 2023, that will take place, and to headline this prestigious event will be your Game of the Year winner. So choose wisely. This will be etched in stone. This your Game of the Year will be immortalized at this incredibly prestigious award show in a few weeks. So stay tuned for that. And it shouldn't even be a few weeks, a couple weeks. We'll get this cranked out in a couple weeks. That way I can have it out early January or right at the end of December. So yeah, man. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. I'm really pumped to see what you guys end up voting. So make sure to stay tuned to that community tab. By the time this is out, make sure, 24 hours or so after this video releases, check back with that community tab and you shall see some polls to be voted upon.